Honorable Ministers, Your Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to this high-level panel at the Yerevan Dialogue 2025 on the South Caucasus as a strategic hub, challenges and opportunities for trade and connectivity. My name is Anahit Pilibosyan, and I am the Vice President of Strategy and Development at APRE Armenia, a Yerevan-based independent think tank. Recent developments, including short-term and long-term geoeconomic and geopolitical shifts, are reinforcing the South Caucasus's potential as a bridge and a vital hub linking Europe and Asia. According to the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the region transported 1 million tons of cargo traffic in 2023, an increase of 65% from 2022, and with a potential for a lot more. But obstacles are preventing it, such as unpredictable journey delays and poor digital and transport infrastructure. This is why we are here today. We have the pleasure of having distinguished speakers to talk about both the promises and the challenges for transit and connectivity in the South Caucasus. Armen Grigorian, Secretary of the Security Council of Armenia, Ambassador Lazar Comenescu, Secretary General, Permanent International Secretariat of the Organization of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation, Dr. Saeed Khadibzadeh, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Head of the Institute for Political and International Studies of Iran, Joshua Kuchera, Senior South Caucasus Analyst at the International Crisis Group, and Eleonora Tafuro-Ambrosetti, Senior Research Fellow at the Russia, Caucasus, and Central Asia Center at the Italian Institute for International Political Studies, ISPI. We will have 2 rounds of questions before opening to Q&A if we have the time. I will start now my questions, starting with Secretary Grigorian. The Crossroads of Peace encapsulates the Armenian government's vision for connectivity in the region. We heard the Prime Minister speak about it, but perhaps you can elaborate a bit more and also explain how it fits in the wider connectivity projects such as the International North-South Transport Corridor and the Middle Corridor.
Thank you, Anaidi, and I would like to join all the welcome words to Yerevan Dialogue, and it's a great honor to be here and to speak to this audience. In reality, the Peace Crossroad is an economic project that has an aim to unblock the region, create interconnectivity in the region, increase interdependency, and strengthen peace and stability in the region. And the government of Armenia came up with this proposal to the regional countries and also to the global community, I mean the other countries, to be engaged in this process, which has a great chance to bring prosperity, first of all prosperity and also stability. We have a strong belief that peace process has many components, and one of the components is economic interrelation between the regional countries, but also, as I mentioned, the project Peace Crossroad gives opportunity to other countries also to be engaged in the process, to gain from the process. For us, it's very much important that the unblocking should happen based on the sovereignty and jurisdiction of the regional countries. And that's very much important also in the context of the peace. We also consider very much important equality while unblocking the region and reciprocity because that are the major principles that will create opportunities for all, but not for unique ones. And with Peace Crossroad project, we try to create interconnectivity, work with regional countries, create interdependency, and strengthen dialogue. Right now, Armenia is implementing many projects which is part of Peace Crossroad, North-South Highway, which is a project that's very much important in interconnection, but also develops Armenian infrastructure. The government of Armenia for the last few years also intensively investing in the infrastructures of Armenia, bringing to the level that will have an opportunity, those infrastructure, to be interconnected to regional infrastructures. And we invite regional countries and global community to be engaged in the process and gain from the process and invest in peace of the region. Thank you.
Secretary Comănescu, the organization of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation is a unique entity bringing together countries of the wider Black Sea region, including Armenia and Turkey, which do not have diplomatic representation otherwise. As our region, the South Caucasus, navigates the turmoil of geopolitics and geoeconomics, how do you see the role of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation in facilitating transit routes within the South Caucasus?
Thank you very much. And but before trying to answer to your justified and well-placed question, allow me a couple of remarks of a rather more general nature, but which on issues which, in my opinion, have a lot to do with the relevance of the Black Sea area and the South Caucasus. My second remark is that, but before that, also allow me to say that I'm particularly glad to be back in Yerevan at this second edition of the Yerevan Dialogue. I had the honor to be in the previous one as well. And I have to say that though this forum is a young one, looking at the level of participants, the panelists, speakers, and the topics chosen for the debate, it clearly shows that the Yerevan Dialogue has already won a top place among events of this kind. And for that, I would like to congratulate our hosts, the Armenian government, for organizing this dialogue. So the two general remarks which I wanted to make are the following. I think that you'll agree with me that in the last years, we've been witnessing a lot of debate about deglobalization, decoupling, de-risking, how to diminish dependencies, how to build resilience based upon less dependency. Well, in my opinion, this is something which goes counter to the real developments into global developments, because we wanted to know globalization will continue. And it's important to be aware of the fact that this globalization is taking place, is continuing under a new paradigm, especially the one generated by the digitalization revolution. But when talking about, so interdependencies will continue, and I would even say will grow. And this is why, in my opinion, I will repeat something which I have already said last year. Rather than speaking about how to build resilience individually, perhaps it's much more important to look into how to build resilient interdependencies. And that brings us to connectivity, which is the key for that. And you may agree with me that looking at the map of the world, this region, the Black Sea wide region and the Caucasus are key in the development of any serious connectivities which are taking into account the global trends in the economic world. And by the way, and this is the second remark of mine, when we look into the map of the world, we see where the engines of growth are. And that brings us to the awareness about the importance of enhanced connectivity between Europe and Asia. And again, you cannot imagine developing any alternative or any project or initiative related to connectivity without taking into account the Caucasus, the Black Sea, the wider Black Sea region and the Caucasus as a whole. So these are the, now trying to come back to your question about what about the organization which I have the honor to represent is doing here. Well, this organization, which was set up 33 years ago, was set up exactly by the founding member states, 11 they were, now we are 13, in order, as a platform for cooperation, for identifying together ways and means to develop economy now in this region, but also to connect with the other regions. And this is what the BSEC has been trying to do. I will not elaborate that much on that, simply to say that during the years, several initiatives aimed at strengthening the connectivity inside the region, but also beyond that, have been taken in the organization. Let me mention, for example, the famous Black Sea Ring Highway, or the motorways of the sea, and very importantly, in the very practical terms, which proves that how important it is to concentrate our activities on the project-oriented type of actions. We've been in the organization setting up the so-called BSEC permit system, which is aimed at facilitating the crossing of the border of trucks of goods. And during the COVID period and after that, this BSEC permit system greatly facilitated crossing the difficulties which within our region, like others, have been confronted with during this period. And I'm glad to say that there are prospects now. 9 of the members of the 13 member states of the EU, of the BSEC, are already. I will conclude by saying that in this particular project, Armenia has been very, very active. And I would like to take this opportunity to give my appreciation for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Dr. Khatibzadeh, Iran is involved very much in the geoeconomics of our region. Iran offers to establish the Persian Gulf Black Sea corridor connecting South and Southeast Asia with Europe via Iran, Armenia, Georgia, and the Black Sea. There is also the western segment of the international North-South transport corridor running through the South Caucasus and Azerbaijan in particular, with Resht Ashtara being the only missing railway link. And finally, just last month in May, the free trade agreement between Iran and the Eurasian Economic Union entered into force. So how does Iran view the transit potential of the South Caucasus?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me this very opportunity to be here. And also I would like to thank organizers of Yerevan Dialogue 2025 for inviting us and also giving us this very opportunity to be in your very beautiful city in such a pleasant weather. Talking about South Caucasus, we have to take into consideration different issues, including the ones that you said. Everybody knows who are attending here that the map of this region indicate to what extent integration in this region, sub-region, South Caucasus, can help us to have a better connectivity and a strategic connection between countries of this region. For Iran, for many reasons, through the millennia, this region has been very important. Those who are aware of the history of this region, they know that for many millennia, Iran has benefited from two main corridors, east-west corridors that later on they labeled it as Silk Road corridor, from eastern border of Iran to the western border of Iran, of course, with two sub-roads, that one goes to Baghdad of those days and one goes to Anatolia and also this South Caucasus of those days. And also another one which is now they call it Spice Road. It's a very ancient also north-south corridor of old days, coming from India to Bandar Abbas and through Iran to Central Asia and Russia. So in this very broader map of connectivity in this region, everybody understands that Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and the whole region of South Caucasus are very vital and important. The initiatives that you mentioned, including the Persian Gulf Black Sea connectivity, and this corridor also is connecting to the two main region through Iran and Armenia to all the way through Black Sea. Maybe later on we can elaborate a little bit on this, but it shows that at the same time, while there are great potentialities and possibilities, at the same time the main question is that why we have not been able yet to materialize all the potentials that we see. This is where that we have to look a little bit on this geostrategic map of the region, and we have to be very careful that up until now there has been geostrategic competition and rivalry in this region that has avoided for the full materialization of the potentials of this region. The history tells us that any extra-regional geopolitical competition in this region is not for the good of the region. So all the countries in the region and in the neighboring area, they have to decide on one very important issue, that extra-regional geopolitical or big power geopolitical competitions, whoever they are, with any intention that they might have, the sacrifice will be the whole region. The second is geopolitical competition inside the region. This morning, Prime Minister of Armenia discussed about the previous routes and time to revive them. I think it indicates to what extent this rivalry inside the region has also avoided this broader cooperation in this region. This is why that Iran has always vocally has said that any geopolitical changes in this region through any initiative is not acceptable. So any connectivity and any connection in this region should ensure that there is no geopolitical changes in the map of the region, being actual corridors or this sort of initiatives that we are hearing. And I would like to second what Mr. Grigorian said about the sovereignty and about the importance of anything being in the realm of international law. So I stop here, and probably I can elaborate later on if there are other questions as well.
Let's turn to you, Joshua, now. You have been following the region for some time, and as the South Caucasus grapples with multiple geopolitical and unprecedented developments, and by that I mean the Russia-Ukraine war, the tensions in the Middle East, and shifting dynamics in the Euro-Atlantic relations. So considering all this, how do you see the prospects of the region becoming this coveted transit hub via east, west, and north and south?
Thank you, Anahit, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me. Well, to state the extremely obvious, for the South Caucasus to become a viable transit hub, there needs to be peace. In particular, for the east-west variant of the middle corridor, without peace, there's not going to be open borders between Armenia and Azerbaijan, between Armenia and Turkey. There's not going to be outside investment in the infrastructure that's going to be required for this region to become a viable transportation hub. But the flip side of that is that the prospect of the Caucasus becoming this hub of transport can help encourage the signature of the peace agreement. This vision of the Caucasus becoming integrated into the bigger world, not just in terms of infrastructure and trade, but in a broader political sense, can be an incentive to put the conflicts of the past behind and work towards a more cooperative future. Another political question that is standing over this is the relationship now between Georgia and the European Union. I'm sure, as you're all aware, the situation is not very good with relations right now. If this continues or continues to get worse, it's going to be more difficult for the EU to work to bring Georgia into this vision. That in turn will make Georgia less attractive for China, for example, to make the investments that it wants to make. And so this uncertainty is increasing the attractiveness of the Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan part of this east-west route, but it's putting some questions and making it more difficult to implement the larger project. Beyond politics, there are just some technical reasons that are going to make it difficult for this region to become a regional transport hub. There's bureaucratic hurdles. When you look at the middle corridor between Europe and Asia, you have to go through all of these countries of the Caucasus and Central Asia, crossing many borders that don't have integrated border control, customs, and so on. And this is a big bureaucratic hurdle for this route that has yet to be really addressed. There's a sea crossing. You have to cross the Caspian Sea to use this route. There's one port on this side of the Caspian, that's at Baku, which has relatively limited capacity. And then you have other geographical barriers like mountains in Georgia and the Caucasus in general. The northern route through Russia does not have any of these obstacles. As long as the war in Ukraine has been going on, there's been an incentive for, especially for outside actors, to try to improve the conditions of the middle corridor. But with the prospect of that war ending, and to the extent that Russia is brought back into the world economy, there's going to be much less incentive for outside actors to make the investments into this middle corridor that could make the Caucasus a viable transit hub. And this is only going to increase the necessity for local actors, regional actors, actors inside the region to work on this.
Eleonora, let's talk about the middle corridor a bit more. It's one of the most discussed transit projects in recent years. Many speak about its potential to connect China with Europe, but there are also doubts about the viability of this project because of the logistical and legal complications, and the growing rivalry with China may add to the complexity as well. So, from a European perspective, how do you see the prospects of the middle corridor?
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you all for being here. I think Joshua already touched on very significant hurdles, but one thing should be clear from the European perspective. Of course, geopolitical necessities and the need to bypass Russia are definitely an incentive to go on with this middle corridor and make it more attractive, but it's also a matter of efficiency. The middle corridor is far shorter than the northern corridor, so I think the number of days that the cargo takes to arrive to Europe is basically half compared to the other route. So there is a lot of hype, and if you look at data, actually, you see that the increase in 2024 of cargo volume was like 60%, over 60% higher compared to the previous year. So of course, the incentives to invest on this route from the European perspectives are many, and from the Caucasus and Central Asian perspective, but also from the Turkish perspective, this is a very worthy project because it increases also the geostrategic position of these regions. But of course, it is essential to manage expectations because of the challenges that we were talking about. It's not just geographical barriers, it's also climate-related threats. And this is valid especially in Central Asia, but I think in the Caucasus, this is an important factor to take into account. The bureaucratic challenges and the hurdles in harmonizing the bureaucracy and the tax system among the states, of course, geopolitical volatility, and also from the European perspective, I think there is a fear that Russia will be able to co-opt this route. Of course, this is more in the general framework of the geopolitical confrontation between Russia and the EU, and of course in the framework of sanctions. Then there is one thing that I think worries Brussels quite a lot, is the very dynamics of the traffic, which is mainly from east to west. So for the European Union, this route is already more expensive than the other available routes. So if trucks then go back from Europe to the east empty, because of course the cargo volume is not as high as it is from east to west, then it adds up to the reasons why the middle corridor is deemed too expensive. And then, of course, the important thing from the Europeans' perspective is, again, to manage expectations and to imagine this middle corridor as developing in the future. Of course, the trend is clear. Europe is now committed to developing this middle corridor. It made it clear also in the first EU Central Asia summit just a few weeks ago, but at the same time, it's impossible realistically to think that the middle corridor will at some point substitute the northern corridor or become the main trade route. This is still not feasible in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years.
Thank you, Eleonora. Secretary Grigorian, you elaborated on the opportunities arising from regional connectivity, and they are compelling, but we also must address the challenges with the ongoing tensions between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The very base to complete mega infrastructure projects such as the Middle Corridor or the International North-South Transport Corridor or the Crossroads of Peace is, of course, geopolitical stability. So what can be done by all parties, and I mean the involved countries, the cooperating countries, investors and others, to address these challenges?
Thank you very much for the question. Just to continue where Madame Eleonora stopped, for example, Peace Crossroad, it's not only about global trade, but it's also about regional trade. I mean, we usually, when we try to discuss it, there's more global concentration. We try to see it from global perspective. That's very much important. But there is another very, very important aspect of that. It's regional trade and regional interdependency and strengthening cooperation in the region. And by the way, if we unleash the opportunity of the region, maybe it will also increase the cost of transportation. I'm sure if there is an economic assessment, then there can be factors or findings that will show that stronger regional cooperation and trade will create more opportunity and may also decrease the price and will create more opportunity. It's obvious that in the regional context it will create also interdependency, and it's also about inclusion. I would like to mention that this project is about inclusion, not exclusion, and we see everyone participating in this project in the region, but also giving chance to other global actors to be engaged in the project. And Peace Crossroad should be also seen as I mentioned, part of the peace process. I know usually the thinking of peace is like it's an event, but in reality it's not an event, it's a process. If we think from process perspective, it becomes very much obvious that there are events that, as in famous song it's said, would be another brick to the wall. I know nowadays sometimes wall has a negative connotation, but I'm very much on positive perspective of the wall. I mean, these events like unblocking, signing the peace agreement would be another bricks to the wall of building peace. And if we think peace as a process, it will become more easy, even in our mind, to resolve existing process and trying to move forward on establishing peace in the region.
Secretary General Comenescu, the Black Sea region has been the theater of geopolitical rivalries and commercial tensions. The efforts to stop the war in Ukraine have intensified, and stakeholders must start thinking about the future possible configurations of connectivity in the Black Sea. So is this something that the Black Sea Economic Cooperation is thinking about? And if so, how does it envision it?
Definitely the answer to your question would be yes. As you referred to the unfortunately still present conflict in our region, I hope that peace would come rather sooner than late, and I think that efforts should be, strengthened towards reaching this objective at the level of the international community, and that would definitely allow us to resume in full the cooperation in the Black Sea area. Now, coming to the various aspects which were touched upon by my colleagues in the panel, and with the hope, as I said, of the war being ended, I think that there are, and this is where we are trying to work and bring our contribution as an organization. There are some, let's say, priority lines of action, in my opinion, in this respect. First of all, and by referring particularly to the connectivity, I think that first we should look what has so far been achieved and still is not fully achieved, and to build upon that. There are, I mentioned in my previous intervention, several projects, initiatives launched inside the Black Sea area, the Black Sea Economic Organization, and there have been important steps therein. Now, the important thing is now to build upon, and by the way, I would like to say that, my second idea is that it is extremely important in whatever initiative and action by locally, I mean, in the region, but also with the involvement of outside actors. It's important to take into account primarily initiatives coming from inside the region. And here, initiatives like, for example, the Crossroad for Peace, which was referred to by the distinguished Prime Minister of Armenia. This is one of these initiatives which deserve to be paid appropriate attention. Of course, these type of initiatives have to get let's say, through negotiations to be endorsed by all the actors so as to make of it a successful undertaking. Third line of action, which it seems to me to be extremely important, I refer to the fact that besides the countries in the BISEC organization, there are also other actors who are paying attention to this region, and actors, be it international organizations or countries, and there is a need, an extremely important aspect. There is a need of better correlation and coordination when promoting initiatives, like, for example, the Middle Corridor. I was last week in Leipzig for the International Transport Forum, and there one particular important idea has been stressed upon, and this is my fourth remark. All these initiatives aimed at enhancing connectivity have to be developed in a context of mutually reinforcing rather than alternatives or competing each other. That's a very important point which has to be taken into account. My fifth remark, I very much welcome the fact that the European Union has proved increasing attention towards this region, be it the Black Sea area or the Middle Corridor. Here, and I understand if my information is correct, the European Union is now about to come up with the revised or a new strategic approach towards the Black Sea region. And here there is one point which I want to stress, which seems to me to be extremely important for the benefit of the region and also for the benefit of the, let's say, cooperation between the European Union and this part of the world and the organizations therein, primarily the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization. There is need of, first of all, taking into account appropriately of the realities on the ground and, how to say, developing, let's say, country-tailored approach in accordance with the need of each of the countries inside this region. And second, there is a need of synergies between what the European Union is advancing or proposing and what has been done locally, including by this organization, by the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization. And finally, still on this aspect, I hope that this strategy, beyond dealing with the current situation, developments, perhaps containment approaches and so on, there has to be there has to include a forward-looking approach. We have to think about the day after tomorrow, how to act so as to create the prerequisites for, let's say, for further progress in economic prosperity in the region. And last but not least, in any kind of undertakings, endeavors in this respect, it's key to get the business communities, the private sector involved, not just in implementing specific decisions or initiatives, but in initiating them, in shaping such initiatives. Because at the end of the day, whatever initiative, albeit wonderful, you come to resources and to entrepreneurship. And this is why, for me, it's key to have the business community involved in all these type of initiatives. And that's what we are trying to do as in the organization which I have the honor to represent. Thank you very much.
Dr. Khatibzadeh, we first discussed the transit potential of the region as a whole, and I would like to turn to Armenia now. There are a number of elements to take into consideration. Iran opposes the creation of the extraterritorial Zangezur corridor via Armenia, which is a demand of Azerbaijan in the peace negotiations. And at the same time, there is actually the Aras corridor linking Azerbaijan to Nakhichevan via Iran, which is close to completion. And finally, Iranian companies are also involved in the infrastructure projects in southern Armenia. So how do you see, what role do you see for Armenia to foster trade and connectivity?
Let me be now be clear that Iran is very much supporting diversification of connectivities and transportation routes and corridors, and we think that more we can have this sort of connectivity, the better for our region, and this is why that Iran 100% supported this peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and we do believe that the sooner you can wrap up this peace agreement is the better for not only Armenia and Azerbaijan but also for the region. In the previous round of my talks, I said that the potentials of this region have never been materialized, and many of our initiatives and many of our projects have been the victim of this geopolitical rivalries and tensions. So peace is not just an option; it's a must. It's something that we all have to devote our energy and our resources for that. But nevertheless, it is also very important. I have to highlight it. I have to make it very clear that we do not accept any change in geostrategic landscape of the region. Let's call it Zangezur or anything else. We do support anything that Armenia and Azerbaijan agree among each other based on the international law and under the international norm, sovereignty and jurisdiction of Armenia, but it is very important to mention that nothing should change the landscape, the strategic landscape of this region. This is why that I really like the way that the crossroads, this pathway was formalized. I was sharing the same panel with His Excellency Mr. Grigorian, and I asked about this Zangezur, and I by intention raised that question because I wanted to hear from Armenia that no corridor can be actually change the logic of corridor, meaning cutting this connectivity in this region is not something that we can see for the future of our region. We think that we need connectivity, we don't need cut. We need communication, but we don't need rupture. And this is why that it should be inclusive, it should be competitive in terms of the economic logic of that, and this is very important. For Iran, Armenia is very important, and for decades it has been the case. This is why that Iran has always advocating the best relation between Iran and Armenia. There are many reasons for that: geoeconomic, geostrategic, geocultural aspects of our bilateral relations. But also, I have to raise and I have to bring this to your attention, that Iran and Armenia for Iran is the only country in the Eurasian Trade Union that we have and we do share border with. So Armenia is not just for us 3 million market that we do not look at Armenia as a market, but we think that it is a gateway to 200 million possible potential partners in this trade union. Also Iran can provide and has always provided a pathway to Persian Gulf. You all know that Iran is the only country on earth that's connect Persian Gulf to the Caspian Sea, and Persian Gulf and Caspian Sea altogether almost cover 70% of all conventional gas and oil in the world. I mean the conventional energy resources of the world. And this connectivity means that we can provide a very economically wise, a very good route to be provided to all South Caucasus, including Armenia. So I would like to conclude this part with this notion that peace is what we actually need for our region. Iran is ready to use all its capacity to materialize this, and I think that Now the logic is out there. Everybody knows that South Caucasus, through these initiatives, through these railroads, through these pathways, can have enough diversification of routes inside and outside. It can provide good potentials, and there is no need for initiatives that are being excluding shared stakeholders in this region. We have to work on these all-inclusive initiatives. Thank you.
All right, we have under 5 minutes left, so I will ask Joshua and Eleonora to respond briefly to the questions, starting with Joshua. Russia and Turkey pushed forward for the 3+3 format of regional cooperation to mean the 3 South Caucasus countries plus Iran, Turkey, and Russia. Some experts speak about the 1+1+1 format, so Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, as the first step towards creating a more cohesive regional structure. And there was actually a meeting at the Deputy Foreign Ministers level recently that embodied that idea, let's say. So, Joshua, how do you see the potential for more regular trilateral cooperation, and how can it affect connectivity and transit projects?
Yeah, so the South Caucasus today is, I think, one of the least integrated regions there are in the world. I think, you know, in the given amount of space, the number of closed borders here is really astounding. All legacies of the 90s. Not only the borders between Armenia and Turkey, but of course Georgia has these breakaway territories, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. The borders there are effectively closed, and that effectively closes off Georgia's good transportation ties with Russia, on which Armenia depends heavily. Now even Georgia, Azerbaijani border is closed for passengers anyway. So there has been a lot of disintegration on this bounds. Secondly, there's a lot of political, historical, cultural reasons why the countries of this region, the 3 countries of the South Caucasus, don't really think of themselves as part of a region. So there's a lot of obstacles to overcome here. I think you mentioned the 3+3. This is another issue where there's interest from 5 of these 6 parties, but Georgia doesn't want to be part of it because of Russia's involvement. But I think the 3+3 should be seen as at least an indication that there is more interest in a regional approach to these problems. The EU as well, I mean, I think they're maybe not as far along, but there are people in the EU who are advocating for a more regional approach rather than a bilateral approach to the Caucasus. So in this context, I think the meeting of the deputy foreign ministers that you mentioned is interesting. It's encouraging. They said it's a first step, and so let's see where it will lead.
Okay. Eleonora, let's end with the role of the EU in the South Caucasus. The EU has been very much involved recently, especially on security, but there is a lot more that can be done. Does the EU have any role in helping realize the transit potential of the South Caucasus? And under which principles do you think the EU's connectivity policy for the region should be pursued?
Yeah, it does have a role, but connectivity is a great example of the challenge facing the European Union. On the one hand, the EU must adopt this geopolitical thinking and acknowledge the political realities on the ground, so it has to be pragmatic. On the other hand, it has to uphold its principles and keep being this value-driven actor that is also a credible one. So, of course, this is easier said than done, and particularly in the South Caucasus, we've seen already some double standards that were evident in Brussels' foreign policy. In the connectivity domain, this could be done on the political level by the credible commitment of the EU in the peace process. Mr. Gregorian was talking about peace as a process, and I very much agree with it. And sometimes you know, the EU kind of stepped down a bit from the mediation between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but it can be very much present if the peace agreement is signed in ensuring that the peace agreement is implemented. So I see a role there. I see a role in facilitating the normalization process between Armenia and Turkey. A lot of people say that the EU doesn't have leverage on Turkey anymore to push this normalization thing forward. I don't fully agree with it, but at the same time, the EU must, of course, put this item at the top of its agenda with Turkey. More concretely on connectivity, the EU should focus on anti-corruption projects and ensuring that the connectivity remains also a transparency project with a focus on SMEs. This is also something that the EU could do in concert with the European Bank for Reconstruction and other local partners, but investing on the SMEs and reducing their exposure to corruption is crucial. And lastly, the EU has to commit really to fostering environmental friendly connectivity projects, because as I was saying, climate-related threats are very much a thing in the South Caucasus, and the EU must really invest in climate-friendly projects. Thank you.
Well, that is the end of our panel. Thank you very much, esteemed speakers. It's been a most instructive debate. Please join me in thanking the panelists before we move to the next session.